My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 26 years old. I never imagined I'd wake up in a hospital bed, fighting for my life. While my own parents told the doctors they couldn't come because my younger sister, Chloe, was walking her dog. Even after the doctor warned them that the night might be my last, they never showed up. It wasn't the first time they'd chosen Chloe over me, but I decided it would be the last. What happened next began with a letter I left behind, one that would change everything. Before I tell you what was in that letter, let me ask, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? If you have, then what I'm about to share might sound painfully familiar. I grew up in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio, in a house with a white picket fence that looked perfect from the outside. My parents, Richard and Elaine Carter, had two daughters. I was the firstborn. Chloe arrived 3 years later, and from the moment she was born, something changed in the way my parents treated us. When I was 7, I came home from school clutching a blue ribbon, first place in the science fair. I'd built a model of the solar system that actually rotated, and I couldn't wait to see my parents' faces. They gave me a quick pat on the head, then turned right back to watch Chloe wobble down the driveway, riding her bike without training wheels. I told myself it made sense. Maybe learning to ride a bike was a bigger milestone than winning a science fair. By the time I was 12, I knew the pattern by heart. Straight A's on my report card got a polite nod from my mom, but Chloe's B- in art? That was worthy of a celebration. When I qualified for the state swimming championships, my dad told me he was proud, but couldn't attend because Chloe had a mild cold and needed him at home. I became an expert at making excuses for them. They were busy. Chloe was younger and needed more attention. I was independent, so I could handle things on my own. Those were the stories I told myself to make sense of why my achievements seemed to vanish into thin air, while Chloe's smallest accomplishments lit up the whole household. Then came my health diagnosis at 16, a severe autoimmune disorder that required daily medication, constant monitoring, and absolute care around triggers like stress, certain foods, and especially animal dander. Even then, my parents treated my condition as if it were a burden to them. Doctor appointments meant my mother sighing about her rearranged schedule. Our visits for severe reactions came with my father complaining about the medical bills before we even reached the hospital doors. Chloe, on the other hand, was healthy, energetic, and the star of her high school soccer team. My parents never missed a single one of her games. They made giant homemade signs and cheered until their voices were hoarse. While I sat beside them, fighting nausea from a flare-up, quietly clapping for her because that's what a good sister does. By the time college decisions rolled around, the favoritism was no longer subtle, it was painfully obvious. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table and told me they could only afford to financially support one of us. And since Chloe wasn't as academically inclined, she would need their help more. That was it. No discussion, no compromise. So, while Chloe's tuition was fully covered, I juggled 3 part-time jobs just to pay for classes, books, and rent. I kept a 4.0 GPA, often studying until sunrise, while Chloe dropped out after one semester because she found it too stressful. My parents didn't scold her. They comforted her by buying her a brand new car. Still, I kept hoping that if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, maybe they would finally see me. I graduated with honors, landed a great job at a marketing firm, and made a point of visiting home often. I brought thoughtful gifts, remembered everyone's birthdays, went out of my way to be the daughter who showed up. But no matter what I did, Chloe was always the center of their universe. When she decided she wanted a dog, not just any dog, but a $3,000 purebred Samoyed, my parents didn't just approve. They paid for it, along with designer accessories and a custom climate-controlled room in their home. And they knew I was severely allergic to animal dander. When I voiced concern, my mom's response was simple: "You can take your medication, sweetie. Chloe really needs this dog for her emotional well-being." That was my family in one sentence. Chloe's emotional well-being always outweighed my physical health. 3 months ago, after weeks of barely speaking to my family, I decided to make an effort to reconnect. I called my mother and suggested I come over for dinner. To my surprise, she sounded genuinely excited. That sounds wonderful, Emily. We haven't seen you in so long. I'll make your favorite lasagna, and your father will pick up that cheesecake you love. For a moment, I let myself believe things might be different. All week, I looked forward to Saturday. I even bought a nice bottle of wine to bring, splurged on a new outfit I thought my mom would approve of, and took extra care with my medication so I could be at my best. When I arrived, my mom greeted me with a warm hug, and the smell of her lasagna filled the air. It felt almost normal. Then I heard a bark. "Is Chloe's dog here?" I asked, already feeling the familiar tightness in my chest. "Of course, Max is here. This is his home," my mother said casually. Chloe had apparently brought him back from her apartment for the weekend.
Mom.
You know I'm severely allergic. I can't be around him for long, even with medication. She gave me a look that said the conversation was over. "We can't just put him outside. It's too cold. You'll be fine for one evening. Just take another pill." Inside, Chloe was curled on the couch, scrolling her phone while Max barked and bounded toward me. "Hey, sis. Look how big Max has gotten. Isn't he gorgeous?" she said, burying her face in his fur. I forced a smile.
He's
fluffy. Those words, "he's family," would echo in my head later. A dog she'd had less than a year was family. Their daughter of 26 years, was expected to risk my health to accommodate him. I excused myself to the bathroom, took more medication, used my inhaler, and told myself, just get through dinner. Keep the peace. But as we sat down, every bite of lasagna felt heavier. Conversation revolved entirely around Chloe and Max, his training, his expensive organic food, the dog's social events she took him to. Every time I tried to share something about my promotion or my night classes, the topic slid right back to Max's latest chew toy. By dessert, my eyes were watering, my skin was breaking out in hives, and my breathing was shallow. Chloe glanced at me for the first time that evening. "Whoa, Emily. Are you having a reaction or something?" "Yes," I managed to say. "To Max. I told Mom when I got here." My mother frowned. "I thought you were exaggerating. You've always been a bit dramatic about your health issues." That was it. I stood up. "Thanks for dinner, but I'm not feeling well." Chloe rolled her eyes. "It's just a little reaction. Pop a pill and relax." I didn't answer. I just left. By the time I reached my apartment that night, I was exhausted, physically from the reaction, and emotionally from feeling invisible yet again. I took more antihistamines, used my nebulizer, showered to calm the hives, and collapsed into bed. I told myself the same lie I'd told all my life. They didn't mean to hurt me. They just didn't understand. But 3 days later, that excuse fell apart. I woke up feeling like a truck was sitting on my chest. My skin was on fire with hives, and when I tried to stand, the room spun violently. I called my doctor's office, leaving a message about my worsening symptoms and explaining the dog exposure. Normally, my reactions peaked after a day or two, then eased. But now I was on day 3 and getting worse. Still, I pushed myself to shower and dress. I had an important presentation at work, and after years of being the strong one, missing it felt unthinkable. Driving to the office was a blur. Every breath was shallow, my vision spotted at the edges. Natalie, my colleague, took one look at me when I walked in. "Emily, you look awful. What's going on?" "Allergic reaction," I managed to whisper. Thought I could push through. Her brow furrowed. "You need a doctor now." I shook my head. "Presentation." "I'll cover it," she said firmly. "Your health comes first. Do you want me to drive you?" I called my doctor again. This time, the nurse's tone left no room for argument. "You need to get to the ER immediately. This could be anaphylaxis." Natalie didn't wait for me to decide. She grabbed her keys and helped me to her car. On the way, I called my parents. No answer. Left a voicemail explaining I was headed to the hospital. Then I called Chloe. "Hey, what's up?" she said, Max barking in the background. "I'm having a bad reaction.
Can't breathe well.
On my way to the ER. Can you tell Mom and Dad?"
Oh,
Yeah, I'll text them. Anyway, Max is chewing my shoes. Gotta go. Feel better. She hung up before I could respond. Even on the edge of a medical emergency, I wasn't the priority. By the time we reached the hospital, my throat felt like it was closing. Nurses rushed me in, voices blending into a blur. Epinephrine, steroids, oxygen. Questions I could barely answer. The last thing I remember was a kind nurse holding my hand and saying, "You hang in there, sweetheart. I'm staying right here with you." Later, I would learn what happened after I was admitted. The hospital had called my parents multiple times, stressing that my condition was critical, that I might not survive the night. And still, they didn't come. When they were finally reached around 6 p.m., my father's answer was chillingly casual. "Tonight's not good. We have to pick up Chloe from the dog park." The nurse explained again, "Sir, your daughter is in critical condition. Her organs are showing stress. She may not make it until morning." There was a long pause, then my mother's voice.
well,
"We can't just leave Chloe stranded with Max. If Emily's still there tomorrow, we'll come by." That was the moment, the exact moment, the last thread I'd been clinging to snapped. I had always believed that if it were truly life or death, they would show up. That deep down, I mattered just as much as Chloe. I was wrong. That night, as machines beeped around me and nurses worked tirelessly to keep me stable, the people who should have been by my side were walking a dog. When I woke briefly in the ICU, I didn't see my parents. I saw strangers, doctors, nurses, and Natalie, who'd stayed until the staff assured her I was stable. People who owed me nothing, but showed up anyway. When I finally regained full consciousness, the first thing I did was scan the room, half expecting, against all logic, to see my parents sitting beside me. But the chair was empty. A young nurse with kind eyes noticed me stirring. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You gave us quite a scare." "My parents. Have they been here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Her smile faltered. "I don't believe so. Would you like me to try calling them again?" I stared at the ceiling, letting the truth settle in. They had chosen not to come, even when told I might not survive the night. "No," I said finally. "Don't call them." The nurse, Ellie, seemed to understand. She squeezed my hand gently. "You've had other visitors, though. A woman named Natalie's been here every day. Some of your colleagues, too." That hit me harder than I expected. Coworkers and acquaintances had shown me more care than my own family. Later that day, Dr. Patel, my immunologist, explained what had happened. "You experienced a biphasic anaphylactic reaction, 2 waves. The first hit after exposure to the allergen, then your body seemed to recover, before launching into a more severe second phase. With your autoimmune condition, that combination is extremely dangerous. Yes, Emily, without treatment, you could have died." Her words didn't scare me as much as they clarified things. For 26 years, I had been chasing my parents' approval, believing that if I worked hard enough, loved them enough, they would love me back in the same way. Now, lying in that hospital bed, I realized the truth. Nothing I did would ever make me a priority in their world. That's when I decided I wouldn't waste another day trying. The idea came to me late one night in the hospital, when the ward was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. If my parents couldn't be there for me in my most vulnerable moment, then I needed to stop pretending we had the kind of relationship worth holding on to at all costs. I was done begging for scraps of love. So I asked Ellie for a pen and paper. She didn't ask questions, just brought me a small writing pad and a lap desk so I could sit up in bed. Over the next few days, between 4 drips and check-ins from nurses, I poured my entire life into that letter. Decades of being overlooked. Every moment I'd swallowed my hurt to keep the peace. Every time Chloe's wants had outweighed my needs. And, finally, the truth about that night, how they had been told I might not live and still chosen to walk a dog. It wasn't an angry rant. It was clear.
direct.
Final. I told them I was stepping back from our relationship, that I needed space to heal, and that unless they were ready to acknowledge the harm and commit to change, I didn't want contact. I told them the door wasn't locked, but it would stay closed until they respected me enough to knock. By the time I signed my name, my hand ached, but my heart felt lighter. On my 7th day in the hospital, Dr. Patel told me I was well enough to be discharged. I'd already decided how I wanted to leave. Ellie came in during her afternoon rounds, and I handed her the sealed envelope with my parents' names on it. When they arrived, I said, "Please put this on the bed. Make it look like I left it there for them." She glanced at the envelope, then at me, her expression softening. Of course. Natalie picked me up that afternoon, and we walked to a coffee shop across from the hospital. From my seat by the window, I could see the main entrance. At 3:15, my parents finally arrived, a full week after I'd been admitted, after the night they'd been told I might not survive. I watched them walk through those doors without any urge to wave them down, because the moment they opened that letter, everything between us would change. For once, I wasn't afraid of that change. I was ready. The next day, Ellie called me. I'd given her my number before leaving. "I thought you might want to know what happened when they read it," she said. She told me they'd gone straight to my room. My mom spotted the envelope first, my handwriting clear on the front. They opened it together, standing at the foot of my empty bed. "I've never seen expressions change so fast," Ellie said quietly. My father's face flushed deep red, then turned pale. My mother went completely white and sat down on the bed halfway through, like her legs couldn't hold her. They stayed in that room for nearly 45 minutes. My father crumpled the letter in his fist, then smoothed it back out. My mother just stared at the floor. When they finally left, she was crying. He looked 10 years older. I listened without much emotion. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd already let go of expecting them to change. At Natalie's apartment, where she'd insisted I recover, life was quiet and safe. No allergens. No tension. She cooked dinner most nights, and when I thanked her for letting me stay, she'd just wave it off. "You're not an inconvenience, Emily. You're my friend." And in that moment, I realized something. The people who truly cared didn't need to be asked twice. For days after they read my letter, there was nothing. No calls. No texts. Just silence. And honestly, that told me more than any speech ever could. For days later, my phone lit up with my mother's name. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was short, clipped, and dismissive. "Emily, this is your mother. We got your letter. I think you're being very dramatic about the whole situation. Your father and I have always done our best for you and Chloe. Call us when you're feeling more rational." There it was. Not a single acknowledgement of what I'd been through. No apology. Not even a hint of remorse. 2 days later, an email from my father arrived. His tone was softer, almost reflective. He admitted they should have come to the hospital, said they'd gotten so used to me handling everything that they assumed this was no different. He claimed they'd always been proud of me, even if they didn't show it in the ways I needed. It was a small step toward honesty, but still far from understanding. I read it twice, then typed my reply. "Thank you for acknowledging you should have come to the hospital. That means something. But this isn't about one night. It's about a lifelong pattern that nearly cost me my life. I need time and space to heal, physically and emotionally. I hope you can respect that." Then I hit send. About a week after my reply to Dad, Chloe called out of the blue. "Mom and Dad are acting weird," she said without preamble. "They won't tell me what was in your letter, but they've been fighting a lot. Mom keeps crying." I didn't dance around it. "I told them the truth, Chloe. About how they've treated me compared to you my whole life. About how they didn't come to the hospital when doctors said I might not make it. Because you needed help with Max." There was a long silence on her end. "I didn't know it was that serious," she said finally. "They just told me you were having an allergic reaction, and you'd be fine." "Would you have done anything differently if you had known?" I asked. Another pause. "I don't know. I guess I never had to think about it before. Things have always been about what I want." "That's not your fault," I said gently. "That's how they raised you. But I can't be part of that anymore." It nearly killed me, literally. Her voice softened. "Are you saying you don't want to be my sister anymore?"
No.
I'm saying I need to rebuild my relationship with myself first. I've spent my whole life chasing their approval. I need to learn who I am without that chase. We didn't solve anything that day, but for the first time, I heard a crack in the armor of her world. And maybe that was a start. 6 weeks after I'd left that hospital bed, I heard a knock on my apartment door. I checked the peephole and there they were, my parents. For a moment, I considered not answering, but something in me wanted to face them. I opened the door just enough to stand in the frame. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My father spoke first. "We need to talk. This has gone on long enough. You can't just cut your family out over one misunderstanding." That word, misunderstanding, lit a spark of anger in me. But my voice stayed calm. "This isn't a good time. If you want to talk, you need to call first. Respect my boundaries." My mother's brow furrowed. "Boundaries? We're your parents. We don't need permission to see our own daughter." "Actually, you do. That's exactly what a boundary is," I said, my voice steady. "Asked for space in my letter. Showing up unannounced ignores that completely." They tried every old tactic: guilt, denial, appeals to family loyalty. My father even accused me of filling Chloe's head with lies. I didn't flinch. "I've only told her the truth about my experience. If that conflicts with the story you've told yourselves, that's on you to examine." Finally, I said what I needed to say. "I nearly died alone in a hospital bed because you chose to walk a dog instead of being with me. I'm not responsible for how you feel about that reality." After 15 minutes of going in circles, I ended it. "I'm closing the door now. Please don't come back without calling first. And if I say I'm not ready, respect that." As I shut the door, my father muttered, "This isn't over." "You're right," I said quietly. "This is the beginning of me valuing myself." It's been 6 months since I left that letter on my empty hospital bed. 6 months of healing. 6 months of learning what life looks like when I stop chasing the approval I'll never get. I moved to a new city, 40 miles away from the old neighborhood and its shadows. My company supported the transfer, and I found a bright, pet-free apartment with top-tier air filtration. For the first time in years, I could breathe easy literally and emotionally. Natalie still visits every other weekend. Mrs. Garza, my elderly neighbor from before, calls every week to swap recipes and tell me about her garden. I've joined a hiking group for people with chronic health conditions and a book club where no one interrupts me to talk about a dog's chew toys. My relationship with my parents? Minimal contact. A brief phone call once a month, only when I'm ready to answer. It's surface level, polite, and stripped of the emotional landmines I once tiptoed around. The bigger surprise has been Chloe. 2 months after my hospital stay, she moved out of my parents' house. She even rehomed Max with a family friend who had kids and a big yard. "I realized I didn't really want a dog," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "I just wanted their attention. But it wasn't fair to him, or to you. We're not magically close now, but we're honest. We talk without the old hierarchy hanging between us." She's starting to see the patterns I've lived with all my life. And me? I've learned that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up, by who holds your hand in the hospital, not who says they will someday. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same. I can forgive my parents for the love they couldn't give, maybe because they never received it themselves. But forgiving them doesn't mean I have to keep stepping into the same fire that burned me. For 26 years, I believed that if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, sacrificed enough, I'd finally earn the kind of love that should have been unconditional. Now I know my worth was never something to be earned. It was there all along. The letter I left in that hospital wasn't just goodbye to a toxic pattern. It was hello to a life where my boundaries are non-negotiable, where my relationships reflect my value instead of eroding it. And if you're listening to this and recognizing yourself in my story, maybe you're the overlooked child, the family scapegoat, the one who spent your life proving yourself to people who will never see you. Hear me when I say this. You deserve better. You deserve care without conditions. You deserve love that doesn't keep score. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop chasing it from the wrong people and start building it with the right ones. If my story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit like if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, and subscribe for more stories of healing and reclaiming your worth. Because the family that truly matters may not be the one you were born into, but the one you choose, one act of self-respect at a time.